Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So I wanted to come on here and put my soon-to-be OBGYN coders on game with what you guys really should be getting when you're studying for your COBGC exam. So right here, I have a op note, and it's for a laparoscopic supracervical hysterectomy. And here is the documentation for it. And I'm just going to go through quickly and read this to you. And if you can hear my son in the background, I'm so sorry. This here, I'm just going to start here because I don't want to read too much. But this is where the procedure is going to start. It says the attention was then turned to the abdominal portion of the procedure. A 5mm infra-umbilical skin incision was made with a scalpel. A 5mm non-blade trocar was then placed under direct visualization of the laparoscope. So this is going to be a laparoscopic type of procedure. And you'll just see here where they're placing trocars there, and they're getting their visualization of the abdominal cavity. And then it says here, bilaterally, the uterine ovarian ligaments were ligated. And remember in my previous video, I told you guys it is so important to know the anatomy. So here is a picture of the uterus, and here are the ligaments that they are cutting. So as you're reading your op notes, it'll be nice to know that these ligaments here are the ones that help keep the uterus in place. So obviously, if we're doing a supracervical hysterectomy, we're removing the uterus. So in order for them to do that, they have to then cut these ligaments. Back here, it says the uterine ovarian ligaments were ligated. And then it says here, the broad ligament was then divided bilaterally using the 5mm cutting scissors at the level of the cervical os. So the cervical os means the cervix where it opens, which is right here. Again, this is supracervical, so they're going to keep the cervix in place. Now, if this was a total hysterectomy, they would be removing the uterus and the cervix. But this was supracervical, so they're going to keep this stump here, is what they call it, a cervical stump, and they're cutting everything else to get rid of it, except for the tubes and the ovaries. Those ones that we didn't see anything mentioning that we were going to be removing the fallopian tubes or the ovaries. So it then says the uterus was then amputated, meaning removed, and using the 5mm cutting forceps with good hemostasis of the cervical stump. The endocervical canal was then cauterized, meaning they're pretty much burning it to stop the bleeding. And the left lower quadrant 5mm port was removed and noted to be actively bleeding. A single figure 8 PDS suture was placed for the hemostatic control, and skin incisions were then extended. So this bleeding here, obviously if you cut someone open, they're going to be bleeding. So when they removed the port, the patient was bleeding. So they were going to go ahead and start stitching the patient up, and the surgery is over. So we still have all this fluff down here. So it looks like a lot of information, but this is just them closing up the patient. So it says the entire uterine specimen was removed. They took out the uterus, and the trocars were then removed. So the laparoscopic portion or the surgery is over. They're taking the trocars out. Things continue to be hemostatic, which is great. Do you see how much stuff they put in these? Well, they have to, obviously, for compliance. So it's in the patient's chart, all this stuff, but you think that there's so much information here, and all this is just what goes along with the surgery. They have to close up the patient, they have to document it, and that's it. What we needed was right in here. And when you go to your code, I don't have my CPT book up here with me, but that's okay, because what I'm going to show you guys is my OBGYN coding companion. Now this book will be your holy grail for studying for your OBGYN certification. You want to get this. It's not even that expensive. I think these are only like $100, maybe $100 to $120. But the reason why they do not want you guys using these is because they give you the exact same information that the documentation has to have in order to build a service. So of course, they're not going to want you to take this book to the exam because you're going to have all the answers. So again, our code was 58541 laparoscopy, surgical, supracervical hysterectomy for uterus 250 grams or less, which I don't even think they mentioned the grams. I'll have to go back and check. And then this one, 58542, with removal of tubes and or ovaries. So if they remove the tubes and or ovaries, you would only code the 58542. But since they left those in place, we're going to be looking at the 58541. And just to give you guys a glimpse of what that explanation is, it says the patient was placed in the dorsal lithotomy position. We have a trocar was inserted. Additional trocars are placed in the right and left lower quadrants. The uterus is dissected and free from the bladder and surrounding tissue, and its body is separated from the cervix. Coagulation is achieved with the aid of electrocautery instruments. Remember, they cauterize the cervix. And then alternatively, some vessels may be ligated, and the uterus is morcellated and removed using endoscopic tools. And then this is information telling you about the 58542 if the tubes or ovaries were removed. So exactly what they have here is what they had here. The exact same thing, but what they want you to do on the exam is they only want you to look at this, because this is what's going to be in your CBT, these two sentences here. But yeah, so I thought this video would be helpful. Hope you guys liked it, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye.